Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us again for another episode of Candor with Pres Eve. I am just thrilled today to be joined by two of my favorite representatives, Rep. Paul Mark and Rep. Lindsay Sabadosa. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Well, we're going to start with Rep. Paul Mark. Rep. Mark, tell us a little bit about yourself, your district, and why you love representing us.
Great. Well, thank you again for having us on today. It's a great idea and a great opportunity to get some ideas out there to the community and have a little bit of a dialogue. My name is Paul Mark. I'm the state representative for Greenfield and 15 other communities that make up the 2nd Berkshire District, stretching across Berkshire and Franklin counties from Pittsfield in the west all the way to Northfield in the east. I live in the town of Peru, which is one of those little towns that doesn't have the internet yet or cell phone service at my house. And so this is actually a special treat for me that I find an undisclosed location out in the district somewhere, and I sit at a picnic bench, and I'm actually on video for once, so it's nice to be able to interact with everybody in that manner. And I have to bring my cell phone and set up the computer and get on the hotspot and all that kind of thing. But it's an interesting job. It's a job where there's a lot of differences just in my district. I mean, I'm part of the city of Pittsfield, obviously the entire city of Greenfield, and then 14 really small towns all the way down to Monroe, which is 120 people. And so it's a different challenge every single day, but you meet a lot of good people, you get to do a lot of interesting things and learn about a lot of things, and you get to be a really good advocate for the people you represent, ideally. So fun to be here, always glad to support the college any way I can, and always good to see my colleague to the south, Rep. Sabadosa, as well.
Thank you. I know that you know firsthand our students' challenges with broadband internet and transportation, so we'll be digging into that in just a moment. Rep. Sabadosa, tell us a little bit about your district and who you are.
Well, thank you so much, first of all, Madam President, for having me here today. It's really a pleasure. My name is Lindsay Sabadosa. I'm the state representative for the 1st Hampshire District, which is Northampton, Southampton, Westhampton, Hatfield, and Montgomery. So only 5 communities, but same number of people as in Rep. Mark's district. And my district is sort of rooted in Northampton. That's our largest city. And it goes all the way out to Montgomery, which is one of the foothills with about 800 people. They do luckily have broadband. We were able to celebrate the installation of broadband in the community last year. Nice. And then I have the smaller communities of Westhampton and Southampton, which are both more residential, and Hatfield, which is a very agricultural community. I really love representing this district, primarily because it's a very active district. I'm in my office right now, downtown Northampton. And one of the things I always tell my colleagues about my district is if there is an issue, it doesn't matter how small it is, I will hear from my constituents. So whether it is about solar siting or the Roe Act or immigration reform or retirement benefits, it doesn't matter. I will get hundreds of emails about it. And here in my office, I have shoeboxes that are just full of postcards from constituents who write to me about everything. So I love representing a district where people are super engaged, where they really want to be involved and they really want to understand the legislative process and how policy is made in the Commonwealth, and they understand that it affects their lives. So thank you for having me here today. And I have to say, the title of the show, every time you say Pres Eve, I kind of have this vision of Elvis and Diana Presley in my head. So it's an interesting mix.
That's a unique one. I love that. I love that.
Oh, future episode.
Yes. And people don't know how much fun we've already had just with the outtakes. I think we could do a whole show just on that. That was so much fun. So let's dig into the issues. We know that you've both been really great champions for rural causes, from farming to broadband internet access to transportation and rural health. What are the biggest opportunities that you see right now in these realms for us to make significant progress here?
Well, when we talk about broadband, the good news is over the past 10 years now that I've been in office, we've really seen significant change and significant progress in getting this broadband project out and available to almost every community. So like even in Peru, my town's almost completely wired. I just don't happen to be one of the people that are wired yet. But most of my towns, either they are wired, and that has happened in the last couple of years, or they have a fixed plan to have their broadband project done in the next 1 to 2 years. And it's exciting because on one hand, we see this level of potential that an opportunity that maybe our communities have been missing out on before. And so opportunity for work from home, opportunity for educational opportunities, opportunity to even something as simple that people watching this are probably going to take for granted. Like I can't watch Netflix. I can't listen to music. I can't do any of these things from my house because I don't have that same kind of access. So almost this opportunity for us to finally join the rest of the country. And hopefully with most of the towns going with a fiber optic broadband solution, you're talking about the potential for us not only joining the rest of the state, but potentially even exceeding some of the broadband services you see in other communities. And so now that the challenge becomes, how do we make sure that we stay at the forefront of technology as technology changes, that we don't get left behind yet again? And those towns that have chosen to go with a municipal based network, I think they're in a pretty good shape, other than costs, of course, which are always going to continue to be some kind of an obstacle. And then the new challenge becomes, there's the opportunity of people wanting to move to Western Massachusetts and make this their home, and the opportunity to work from home and work remotely, connecting us and making this more attractive region. But there's going to be challenges that come with that as well. So people that have lived in a community for a long time and maybe want to see their kids grow up there and raise children there. There's a potential of house values and such going up, and markets really changing. And I've been warning some of the towns that while this is a great goal and this is where we want to be, you also have to kind of prepare for the future and prepare for this potential influx of more people that's going to change the character of the towns, and hopefully in a good way. And then there's a lot of opportunity right now with the federal infrastructure bill that's pending and the federal stimulus money that's coming to us, to maybe really take advantage of not just broadband infrastructure, but transportation infrastructure, educational infrastructure. I know we're working together with GCC on a project to advance health services and healthcare education to people ready to advance to the jobs of coming days of the future. It's important as a region that we're ready to meet the needs of the economy as those needs arise. I think GCC's been doing a great job in that.
Wonderful. Thank you. I can tell you, as someone who is in the market looking for a home, the prices are really have really escalated from just a couple of years ago. So Rep. Sabadosa, what are your thoughts? Same question.
Well, I think that Rep. Mark brought up some really interesting points and things that we do need to consider as we're moving forward. And I'm glad we're talking about affordability. In Northampton, which is not, it's a small city, so not a rural community, but just to provide an example, we've seen waves of people moving into the city over the years. You can almost tell what year someone moved into the city by the location from where they moved, right? So we sort of had the influx from California, we had the influx from Cambridge, we had the influx most recently from Brooklyn, lots of former Brooklynites here. And it leads to affordability issues. And that's something that the city has grappled with for a long time. I think with COVID, and particularly with more rural communities seeing broadband coming in, more conversations about transportation, the ability for people to work from home, and then the fact that we already have some housing, and again, not downtown Northampton, but in our smaller communities that is affordable, we're going to see a lot of people moving into this area. And then we have to figure out what that means for the people who currently live here. We already have about a shortage of about 19,000 units in Western Massachusetts, people who just can't afford anything. And we have let that question of affordable housing be an Eastern Massachusetts question. It is not. It is something that we have to grapple with, and we have to grapple with immediately. And it means for Northampton, but it also means for Southampton and for Westhampton and communities that are otherwise going to see local residents priced out, children having to move elsewhere, and what communities can then access through the federal government. A lot of times our rural communities have been able to access federal grant programs. When you have a few multi-million-dollar homes thrown into a more rural community, all of a sudden the average income in that community goes up. The community can no longer access those grants, and it becomes difficult for everyone to figure out how they move forward. So I think that we're in a moment of great opportunity with this federal influx of dollars. I hope that a lot of it can go towards affordable housing, both that capital A affordable, where we're actually subsidizing it, but a lot of that middle income housing for people who are looking for a $200,000, $300,000 home that is just, it doesn't really exist anymore otherwise. So these are conversations that we're certainly having on the state level, but we need that federal money to make them reality, quite honestly.
I completely agree. And I want to follow up on the housing insecurity issue that you've raised, because we know housing insecurity, food insecurity, and just overall economic insecurity are real challenges for community college students. Can you speak with can you speak to some of your work in these areas and how they benefit community college students? And Rep. Sabadosa, if you don't mind, can we start with you on that one, since you were just speaking about housing insecurity?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that it's hard for a lot of us to sort of realize the issues that community college students are facing right now because 20 years ago we did a better job of supporting students in a lot of ways. Students were able to access meals on campus and everybody was given a card and it was part of the price. But with rising costs, that has changed, and I don't think a lot of people have realized the level at which students are struggling both to find housing, both to make sure that they're getting a meal, and to get to campus on time. So there are a lot of really great legislative proposals that are out there that are trying to address this. I guess I get concerned when we focus too much, though, on how do we set up another food pantry? How do we, make sure that we're handing out bag lunches? Because we're not getting to the root issues of the
Right,
problem.
right.
And I think as a legislature, spend a lot of time on these band-aids. We were at a meeting a few weeks ago, and we were talking to the Food Bank of Western Massachusetts, which does wonderful work in the community. And the issue that they kept raising was, well, when the federal government handed out stimulus checks and when people got that extra bump in unemployment, all of a sudden we saw the use of food pantries go down because people had enough money on their own. Crazy idea, right? Pay people a living wage and then they can actually provide for themselves, which we've seen historically. The more people are making and the more that dollar can actually buy, the less need is for these safety net programs. We want them there because we want to make sure that we're providing them. But I think that the government's job right now is to make sure that we are boosting wages for people.
Mhm.
And it gets very frustrating for me. And I will then let Rep. Mark speak because I think he agrees with me on this. When we hear this sort of drumbeat of, well, we can't afford to pay people, we can't afford to pay benefits, you know, just basic healthcare should include these wraparound services. You should go to your doctor and there should be questions about, do you have enough to eat? Are you afraid of losing your home? That's part of healthcare. We're seeing that happen through the state with some of our mass health programs and our ACOs that make sure that people are being looked at holistically and taken care of.
Mhm.
But private insurance is not there yet. So I think that these are some of the opportunities in my areas of focus in the legislature.
That's great. It's all about structural reform and addressing the root causes of these issues. And I'm so glad to hear you say that. Rep. Mark, what say you?
Yeah, no, it's a really great question, and then obviously I agree with a lot of what Rep. Sabadosa just said, and so it's a question that hits home for me in a very personal way. And so when we talk about the cost of college and the affordability of college and the lack of opportunity that comes with missing the opportunity to go there because you can't afford it, it is important to say that yes, tuition is a factor. Tuition matters. Student loans matter. Student debt matters. But it also matters, can I actually afford anything else in my life? And so you're looking at someone that dropped out of college after their first year at UMass, a school, because not only did I not have money to help loans, not only did I have money to pay tuition and such, I didn't have money to live. I didn't leave and go work. I know what it is. Food insecurity, homelessness, all of these things become a factor. So you have people facing this either before they start college or once they're in. And just from my experience working student loan in the legislature, you have someone that gets through 2 to 3 years of college and doesn't graduate because of the debt. Well, they're missing out on all the benefits of getting paid and great opportunities for better employment opportunities, but they're still stuck with that debt, not able to pay it off. And so hearing people focus on beyond tuition, which is important as one of the leads of this Cherish Act, which President, you've been down to Boston, you've been a champion for, which is amazing as an administrator, fighting for funding of colleges like DC. And as someone who is ultimately a graduate of a community college in Massachusetts, it's so important that we fund, but we also look at what other obstacles are that are keeping people finishing their studies, and what as a state can we do to take those burdens off people and to be more collaborative, to make sure that they're getting the resources they need to finish their education. And, finally being able to go back to school, and I was lucky, I had a really great job, had this great tuition plan. Being able to go back to school, finish the education is the difference between me ending up in a job like this and the opportunity to talk on television with great people like all of you and fight for causes, and me being stuck, like my parents, with not the greatest opportunity in the world and constantly facing foreclosure and a lot of terrible issues. And so, yeah, anything I can do to support any of this, I'm always going to be there for it.
Thank you so much, Rep. Mark. I just want to say that we're having a little bit of issues listening to you from time to time. That's okay. We know it's a function of where you live, and that's also what makes you very relatable to our students and to our community. We appreciate your perspectives here. Lindsay, if I could go back to you, we've seen a lot of activism by young people, whether it's on the global climate change front or Black Lives Matter demonstrations. Young people today are far from being apathetic. What do you make of this engaged citizenship right now?
Well, I think that we need to celebrate it, right? And we need to encourage it. We need to see more people out there. I mean, I think one of my favorite, and I don't remember where I heard it, so I wish I could give credit, but I've heard many times this figure that you need 3% of a population to show up in order to have a real uprising and to create real change, this real structural change that we're talking about. It doesn't come easily. People really like the status quo, even if they, are in the newspaper telling you otherwise, or out campaigning and saying we need to change things. At the end of the day, people really are comfortable. And so the people who are in power are really comfortable.
Right.
And so you do need people out there pushing every single day. And I love that young people are out there doing it. I like to be out there joining them. I can't wait until COVID is over. And so we can all get back out there to do that more. It's funny because you say this, and I have signs in my office that young people have brought in that have been amazing, rather like fighting against gun violence in schools and trying not to close birthing centers. And there's so much that people have been involved in. But I think that the message, and I hate to say this, but the message is we need more, because we're not at that 3% yet. The Women's March on Washington in 2017, I guess it was now, it only brought out about 1.5% of the US population, which, we looked at those pictures and I was there and we couldn't move, but that's still not quite enough. And 3%, it's a big number, but it's also really tiny. But it's what we're going to need if we want to talk about issues like actually paying people a living wage, actually making sure your job has benefits, making sure that food is not a luxury. And so I guess my message to young people is like, keep roping in all of your friends, because we're not at the point yet where we're seeing dents, which is great. That's progress. And we want to encourage that. But we're not at the point yet where we're really seeing what we need to. So I hope that young people will keep showing up. I hope that everybody will show up. But I do really love the idea of just lots and lots of teenagers and college students getting out there and demanding what we should be doing anyway.
And Rep. Mark, I can't stop thinking of you and the census movement and how you were just such a big champion for that and for voting this last election cycle. What are your thoughts on the level of activism that we've seen by young people recently?
Yeah, it's exciting because younger people, they still have those fresh ideas in their head and they haven't got set into their ways. They haven't got set into the system, as it were. And so even the most excited of us, as you learn more about how the lines are drawn and the rules are drawn, it's tough for you to keep that fresh energy. So the more encouragement we can give to people to keep them coming, the better. And the best thing I see coming out of young people today and being accepted by people, we're all about the same age, the three of us, of our generation and even older, is the destigmatizing of a lot of things that people, I think, were afraid to talk about. And so, like, we just talked about poverty. And, you can bet that if this was 1985, would I be comfortable talking about, yeah, my family, we were on food stamps and we lost houses and things? Right. No, absolutely not. That has changed, that we all have a story to tell, and it's important that we're not afraid to tell it. And so we've seen progress. And again, I think a lot of it is driven by younger people who are more willing to talk about things in poverty, in homelessness, in hunger, in race relations, in drug addiction, in the stigma that has gone on with so many of these things, that not talking about it actually makes it worse, that hiding from it makes it worse. And so that's the other encouragement, and another reason why it's worth us doing a show like this and having a show like this. Being on a show like this encourages people to know that we're normal people. You can reach out to us. I'm not afraid to talk. I'm not afraid to listen. When COVID is gone, we go back to having our office hours, which has graciously been provided by GCC for the past 9 years downtown Greenfield. And anyone always has felt comfortable walking in, letting us know what's going on, and understanding that, yes, someone in politics, someone elected official isn't this person that flies on a helicopter and has a limo and that stuff. No. We're people like you that we want to hear from you, and we want you to be engaged. And so the opportunity to talk to students especially is always valuable, is always one I've taken, and always one I've taken advantage of. And I know Rep. Sabadosa also does the same. And GCC students we've often had at the State House, and it's just always great to encourage them.
Yeah, this is great. And I will say to folks who are watching, I've actually seen Paul Mark just sitting there having a beer with union reps from our college. So he is real. He's a normal person. He drinks, he eats, he does the same stuff the rest of us do. So let me stick with you for a minute, Rep. Mark. In addition to being a legislator, you're also an adjunct faculty member here at GCC. And I want to know a little bit more about what inspired you to teach and what you love most about teaching.
So Buzz Eisenberg used to teach the class that I teach now, American Politics, and was part of the department. And I had him in for one of my Berkshire days at the State House, and he loved it. And he asked, can we have a bunch of students in? And so that turned into a yearly event that I had students from class in, and then I would have the GC Student Senate in, and then I would make appearances at the class. And then when it switched to David Lanois, I would come into the class. And at some point, one of them came up with the bright idea, why don't you just teach the class? Like, why do we have you coming in and doing all these things? So when I was offered that opportunity, I jumped at it. And I came to class. It's a fun experience. I get to bring, I think the point of having me as a teacher is to bring the legislative perspective in a way that, someone that reads about it in a book can't bring. And so I turn the class into like a mock lecture, have fun with it. It's interesting. It's been interesting to do remotely this session for the first time. I find a way to be in video once a week with the students. But yeah, it's really an interesting opportunity to be able to teach, to answer questions. And it's sometimes the students, the things they'll say sometimes are so wise that you'd be like, wow, how did you know that? How did you think of that? How innovative are you? And then other times, like just this week, I was being asked, like, well, how come you have to run for re-election, but Nancy Pelosi never runs for re-election? It's like, actually, this is how it works. And then I said, but this is why I love teaching these classes, because now all of you know this, and you get to go out and you share what you've learned from me with other people. And again, as a community college, it's really special to have the chance to make sure that our students, community college students, are getting the best education possible. And I'm not saying because I'm the greatest teacher in the world, but because you're getting someone, again, that is in practice, that is a very limited, very local celebrity, but nonetheless, as you're saying, is kind of a draw, and people seem to like the class and like to be there. And then when it's normal times, unfortunately, it's not going to be this semester, I bring the class down to the State House and let them interact with, some of the higher ups. It's been lieutenant governors, it's been secretaries of states, it's been speakers of the House. And, what a great opportunity for them, again, to see firsthand, these are regular people, and they actually do surprisingly want to hear from us.
That's great. And I have to say that is an understatement about them liking your class. They love your class. The minute the class opens up, it gets filled up and people are sitting in waiting lines to be able to be let in. So I just want to say thank you for being such a wonderful legislator and faculty member. And rumor has it that students actually write legislation that you introduce to the State House. Wow. What a treat. What a treat. I wish I had that when I was in college. We'll wrap up with a question for you, Rep. Sabadosa. Like me, you are a mama, and I see you and your daughter out all the time, whether it's the campaign trail or just community events. She's always there, right there by your side. I want to better understand how you and your daughter have really grown into this role together and what you've learned about women's causes during this pandemic.
So I have to start just by being incredibly honest and telling you that my daughter hates that. She hates being brought places, and she will tell you she hates politics. I don't believe that that's true, but she says that she hates politics. I think it's hard. She is a very introverted child. If she had her way, she would sit at home and play violin all day. And if I had my way, I would be out talking to people. So it's been a real challenge. Like the can we go? And I'm like, nope, there are still three people here, so I have to stay and chat. And that's been, it's hard. It's hard parenting. Your kids do the exact opposite of what you do because that is how life is supposed to work. And she's been very patient over the years, and I think fundamentally is proud of the work that I do and does try to understand it. But I think that she she is very happy that there's a little bit of a break from everything right now. I wonder about sometimes though when she talks about how she doesn't like going to events, if there is a little bit of just learning by osmosis,
Mhm.
because then she will come home and she'll say things and she'll have opinions where I think, okay, she is listening, even though she's telling me she's not. And so, when she was a baby, I brought her to see Gloria Steinem. Now, she was like maybe 4 months old,
Wow.
but Gloria Steinem was at Westfield State. She was speaking, and I was like, my daughter is going to be in her presence.
I
Because
love
like
it.
just because like right like she has to be in that room. And so my daughter Kala, she'll complain a lot about these things, but then she'll get to like again the Women's March, and I have this great picture of her like picking out what sign she's gonna hold from Emily's list, and she's standing up on blocks and holding her sign and
Aw.
chanting. And I've got some great posters that she made in the office about like women power and women being the future. And then, I hope she'll keep taking those lessons and moving them forward. I mean, recently she goes to JFK here in Northampton. She's finishing up 8th grade. And the city has really been grappling with the fact that there's been a lot of racism. I mean, we're not immune, right? Every
Right.
community has racism. There is racism everywhere. And we had an issue recently with someone displaying the Confederate flag. We now have a Black principal at JFK who has been awesome. And the students organized a protest. And we're in the middle of a pandemic. I'm working from home. She comes into my bedroom and she says, can you get my bike out from the basement because I have to go to a protest? Now, usually it's the flip. And then her yelling at me, like, it's not safe, it's not safe. But when this thing happened and it was personal to her, she decided, like, actually, I don't care. I'm going and I'm going to stand up for what's right, which made me really proud of her. And I hope that she will continue to do
Aw.
that for many, many, many years to come. And I know you asked specifically about women's issues, but one thing that I've tried to teach my daughter is that every issue is a woman's issue because it all intersects. So there's no such thing, and I think we're seeing that. I'm watching states, and it's so great because we're talking, like Paul's is talking about being a regular person that you can see out drinking a beer. Watching states and state legislatures pass terrible laws that are attacking young people right now, that are attacking choice, that are criminalizing poverty, and they're really focusing on young people. Like, how do we hurt young people the most?
Yes.
Um, your legislators here are not doing that. And we want you to keep being involved and engaged with us. But at the same time, like, it really just shows how young people need to keep getting out there. All of these issues are deeply, deeply interconnected. And I hope that my daughter will keep doing that. And I hope she and all of her friends will continue to be out there and push the envelope.
Yeah,
We need
I
them.
have to say, our girls are about the same age and they both love the violin. And I will say that socialization matters. And so often when we think they're not listening and they don't really care, they really do. And they're both introverted. And it's amazing how much introverts listen and how much they take in. So on that note, I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. I take it there's someone coming around, Rep Mark. So he's got his face mask on. So you have gotten a really authentic taste for what it's like to represent rural Massachusetts from both of these representatives. And I'm just thrilled that you joined us today. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. And I look forward to the next episode. Thank you so much, Lindsay. And thank you, Paul. Have a great day.